sun. The humble building was topped by a roof of corrugated tin, its windows sealed with clear plastic, which provided some protection against the tiny winged predators whose flights could be as lethal as that of any stealth assassins in that part of the world. Both the flies and the mosquitoes could kill a healthy aid worker with a single bite or sting, especially when the rains came in late July. For the vast majority of Camp Hadith's residents, the risk was far greater. Unless caught at an early stage, malaria was a virtual death sentence in the internally displaced persons' camps, the young and the very old being at highest risk. African trypanosomiasis, or sleeping sickness, could be added to the long list of rampant scourges that included measles, tuberculosis, and the worst killer of all, the HIV retrovirus, which had held the continent in its iron grip for decades. And, of course, there was the poverty and ignorance. The terrible persistent unavailability of basic health care, education, and nutrition, which flung open the doors to every opportunistic strain of disease emerging from the steppes and woodlands to the north. Never far from the nurse's mind, the many dangers that plagued the camp accounted for her sense of profound sorrow as she quietly made her way down the narrow aisle separating the hospital's 40 beds. She always felt this way when she stopped to consider the magnitude of what the African people had suffered, of what they still suffered on an hourly and daily basis. Lily Durant had been in West Darfur for just 6 months, but during that time she had come to see the true depth of hardship that her patients endured. Not to understand it, but to see it in front of her, around her, everywhere. For Lily, that was an important distinction. She wanted to help these people, but she didn't claim to identify with them, nor did she pretend to understand what they were going through. Her refusal to do so wasn't a matter of Western arrogance. In fact, it was the complete opposite. In Lily's eyes, the situation was simple. She was there to help, not to judge, not to empathize, not to intellectualize, but to help. Nothing more, nothing less. Reaching the end of the aisle now, she heard a small noise to her right. As she turned toward the sound to check it out, she moved quickly to the side of the bed and knelt by the hard mattress. Her calves and thighs immediately screamed out in protest, as if to remind her that she'd been on her feet for the past 20 hours. But Lily ignored the pain and focused on the patient lying before her. She leaned forward, her fingers brushing against the mosquito net that covered the squirming figure. "Hello, Limya. Badai lo kadai," she whispered, asking the sick girl if she needed anything in the Zagawa tribal dialect. It was one of many local phrases Lily had made it a personal imperative to master. While it was nearly impossible to absorb all the languages of the camp, she had found that even a few key phrases could help bridge the cultural and linguistic divide. "Do you need anything?" And they all did. More than any one person could give. But nothing was worse than nothing, and that was the sum total of indifference. Lily felt she'd waited a long time before the patient replied. Then, without warning, the girl let out a short, high-pitched squeal that sent a shiver of alarm through Lily's body. She grasped blindly for the girl's fragile hand through the mosquito netting. When she found it, she squeezed it gently in an attempt to reassure her. Only then did Lily realize that the girl was dreaming, caught up in the tangled web of her own terrible past. She continued to squirm and cry out for a few minutes longer. After what seemed like an eternity, the moaning began to subside. Then it stopped altogether. Once Lily was finally sure that the girl was asleep, she closed her eyes and permitted herself a deep, weary sigh. She was mentally and physically exhausted and knew that the strain was starting to show. Even as she acknowledged the truth of this, though, she silently rebuked herself for being so weak. What business did she have complaining about her minor aches and pains when the people in this very room had lost so much? The sleeping girl, whose hand she even now continued to hold, was a perfect example of the terrible things taking place in the region. Only 16, Limya Sanoase had lost her mother, father,